Fun Monday morning when Mike Gill joins us here on Good Morning NFC East. And Mike, I don't know where to start at week 15, not even in the division. Just a crazy, crazy weekend around this league. I still can't get over what the Patriots did yesterday.
Ending to that game, unbelievable. You go back to Saturday, obviously the Vikings game started the whole thing off. The game in the middle wasn't so great. The night game was another good one with the the Dolphins and the Bills. We had overtime, 2 games yesterday with Dallas obviously choking that thing up. Kansas City getting the scare from Houston. It was another wild week, 15 weeks in, and we still don't really know how to make sense of it all. I thought and by the way, of all the games, the game last night wasn't great, but I was shocked at the result. I thought Washington would take care of business and really put the dirt over the grave of the Giants last night, and the Giants showed some life, so give them some credit, man. The NFC East had a wild day yesterday, but it was a wild week 15.
Yeah, right after the Giants beat the Commanders, I was thinking the Giants just said, don't put dirt on my grave just yet, because they have the inside track now toward making the playoffs. Shout out to Saquon Barkley for that huge drive by the Giants last night to get that game to 20-12, because after Taylor Heinicke fumbled, by the way, a lot of people think Taylor Heinicke had a good game last night. I did not. But after he fumbled that ball in the red zone, Saquon Barkley just put on a clinic. Not with like big time run. I'll stand corrected. He did have big time runs, but it wasn't like an explosive run. It was pound the ball up the middle and run this defense over 3 straight times. He did that. Giants made it 20-12. And I'm thinking, okay, there's no way Washington's going to score 8 points off that. Shout out to the Giants. They had a game plan. They stuck with it the whole night.
Yeah, I mean, and then Washington gets down. They score. You get just a terrible penalty on Terry McLaurin at the end of that game. I mean, they have a touchdown. They have a chance to tie the game up, and then he gets that penalty, for not lining up right. I mean, can you imagine getting 6 points taken off the board because you didn't line up right?
Did you think I'll say this. I got a couple.
Hard to tell.
Yeah, I got a couple interpretations, right? So Anthony Armstrong, who comes on this show, I asked him last night, hey, man, like, you played in the NFL. How does this thing work with lining up? And he said, well, it's tricky because sometimes they tell you to move up and sometimes they don't. So I don't know what they did or not. McLaurin says they did. They said he was fine, but you can tell that official was waiting to throw that flag.
Well, and they brought it up on the broadcast. It was hard because the camera angle was not straight down the line. It was a little off, so you couldn't tell. But what they were talking about was McLaurin pointing at the official. You'll see receivers routinely, hey, am I okay? Okay. And they'll say, nope, move up or move back or whatever. So they didn't go into depth or bring it, full circle to kind of say like, hey, here's him pointing. There's the they didn't really show us all that. So they just gave us like this view from behind that, oh, yep, McLaurin, he didn't line up right. I don't know how definitive it looked to you. It was tough from the view that I got from it, but that's just a terrible way to get 6 points taken off the board. And, and like Heinicke is Heinicke. I mean, he's not great, but he just has energy. He just keeps that team involved. He takes off on that play, and the receiver, what the heck kind of block was that? All he has to do is just get a fingernail on that guy and alter him a little bit, and they score there. He ran right past him, and Thibodeau ends up stopping Heinicke at the goal line there. That should have been 6. Who's won? Is that Dotson?
That's Jahan Dotson, yes.
Awful. Looks like he went to Penn State.
Thank you, boy. Well, he blocks like he played for James Franklin, so I got to give you a little bit of pass there. But I will say this too: that McLaurin call probably wasn't even the worst of the entire sequence in that red zone, because Darnay Holmes, I'll say it was a personal foul that they should have got a 1st and goal at the 1, but I will say this, and this is where I blame Heinicke. And Commanders, two of my buddies who, one used to work for the Commanders, the other is a big Commanders fan at CBS. They did not agree with my premise. I said, well, maybe that flag would have been called if the quarterback sells that throw more instead of throwing it up like it's a Hail Mary.
No, I don't know about that, man. Listen, he's bouncing around. He's looking around. He's got protection. No one's open. They're doubling McLaurin in the back of the end zone. That dude's draped on him. I mean,
he was draped on him before that. That's where I thought the penalty should have been called, way before the pass was struck.
Wherever he looked like he had a knapsack on. I mean, the guy was draped over both of his arms. I mean, that's a definitive penalty. We see them call way less than that. And I don't know what the fix is. I mean, these officials are horrible.
Horrendous, Mike. Horrendous.
Week in and week out. They're just flipping coins. They don't know what's what. And I don't think it's their fault. The game is just so fast for these guys. I mean, you could throw a flag there. See, this is where, you have to somehow merge the college system and the NFL, where you have to have somebody officiating the game. Someone has to throw the flag and officiate the game. But the technology is so fast to look at that play in real time right back and be like, okay, we threw the flag for safety reasons or because we just wanted to take another look at it because in real time. You can't say to make a call in real time and think you're going to get these calls accurate enough. And I say enough. You're not going to get them right all the time. There's a lot of plays that look worse than they are, and you're just throwing a flag. Oh, that looked really bad. And then you look back at it and say, nah, it was nothing. But you could look back at it that fast. You could literally have someone standing on the sideline with an iPad or a Microsoft Surface or whatever they use and see, okay, I threw the flag because I thought I saw this. But it happens so fast, I don't know. They can get these calls. That call has to be made. It's a terrible non-call.
Well, here's the great explanation here by John Hussey. By the way, these pool reports sometimes are ridiculous. So when Hussey was asked about the last call, pass interference is a judgment call. To the officials, it didn't rise to what they felt was a restriction. Thus, they didn't call it. That's basically the bottom line here. It's a judgment call, and they didn't believe it was pass interference. So you just gave me a nothing burger. I'm telling you, Mike, I think I would not have a problem with any call in the whole NFL if John Hussey would go up to the podium before Ron Rivera and speak for 10 minutes and answer every question without a BS answer.
Well, yeah, and of course he's not going to give you anything. He's going to protect his guys.
But at least guys like you and me can ask him tough questions instead of a pool reporter.
Yeah. Oh, and listen. At what point is that the next, after these games, most of the time, that's the person you want to talk to for some of these calls that end up impacting the game so much. That's a play there. They should have the ball first and goal on the 1 yard line and have 4 chances to get it in. There's enough time to run 4 plays. I think they had a timeout left still.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if they had timeout left, but yeah, you're right. There was at least 40
Yeah,
seconds
I think they had a timeout left because with 103 was the play where Heineke went out of bounds because the receiver, Dotson, Penn State, sucked at life. Horrible effort.
Well, you're taking your Penn State shots today. You want me to go on Geno Smith on you? Because that's the only West Virginia player I know that's in the NFL right now.
Yeah, who else is in the league? Oh, Kaiser White. Come on.
Kaiser White, yeah, there we go. There's another West Virginia. But you know what? We look at him as more of a Mayas High School than we do West Virginia these days.
All right. I can think of Rasul Douglas. I can think of a couple more. Anyway, no, I mean, he goes out of bounds with 103. And I think when that play happened, there was 53. Because the Giants called timeout. They gave him their timeout back because the guy ended up going out of bounds. And I think that was second because they kept throwing passes incomplete. So they didn't need a timeout. They didn't run the ball. So they had a timeout left. So that play there has to be called. They get the ball at the 1. Now, do they make the 2-point conversion? Who knows? But I would have rather seen that drama than watching the defender like a knapsack on his back, on Curtis Samuel's back.
Here's the other thing, too. I was just thinking about this game now. You know Brian Robinson only played 20 snaps. He was probably the best player on the field, not named Kayvon Thibodeau last night.
Yeah, well, they got down in the game, and then I guess in that mode, they're not using him in the pass game as much, right? So they're down. They're down, and it's what was it, like 17-9 at some point when they try to get back in that game. But yeah, I mean, if they're running the ball, I think Robinson is in there more, but they got forced to end up throwing the ball so much. Look, I was shocked. I said all week that was a terrible spot for the Giants. They tie at home. They have to play the Eagles the next week while the Commanders get to watch them. They had 3 weeks to prepare for that game. Unbelievably horrible game plan by the Commanders. They deserve to lose for not being prepared.
And by the way, shout out to the Giants, because I'll say it, Mike. I think they're going to make it now. I think the winner of that game makes the playoffs. I know I'm looking at the schedule. It's Minnesota, it's Indianapolis, it's Philadelphia, but I think the Giants could even lose out and make it just based on how this playoff race is shaping up.
I don't know if they can lose out. That's being a little.
Well, they need 9. They need one more.
Well, listen. Look at the standings right now. That tie has helped out both teams because Washington is still hanging on because of the tie. They only have 6 losses. Detroit at 7-7 is on the outside looking in. But right now, who would you rather play, Detroit or Washington or New York?
I think I'd rather play the Giants out of all 3 of them. But if you're asking me who's going to go to the playoffs, I think the Detroit Lions get in.
They may. There's still 3 games to make some stuff happen, and Seattle's still hanging in there too. But as you alluded to, I think that Raider game I thought really hurt them. They gave up a 40-burger in that game, and it kind of showed some things there. And they just have not played as well. But that tie is looming for both teams right now. It has them both in. So keep that could be the difference maker. You could have 2 teams that bounce a team out because they have a less loss, but the same amount of wins.
I tell you what, Washington's schedule definitely isn't easy the rest of the way.
New York and Washington have the 2nd and 3rd most difficult schedules left. So they're going to have to earn their way to get in. There's no question. I've been saying for 6-7 weeks now, the Giants need to find 2 more wins on their schedule. And one of the Washingtons had to be it. They got one. They got a tie, so they really got 2. They probably still need 1 more real win to get in here. And they got 3 chances left. And that game with Philly is probably going to be highly unneeded for Philadelphia to play any players.
Dude, I think the Eagles will rest guys against the Giants because
there's no question against. So, it's interesting because the game, as I think you and I've been saying for a while, the game on Christmas Eve will have very little meaning because I just figured that Dallas would not do their job, and I figured Philadelphia would do their job. That game will have very little meaning. I actually kind of hope Dallas wins the game at this point. If you're an Eagles fan, you almost want Dallas to win to make those stinking losers feel like they have a slim hope. They have no shot. They're a loser team. They're a loser organization. That's what they are. That game yesterday, the 2 games that stand out in this season for Dallas, Green Bay, who stinks out loud, and Jacksonville. You can't beat either one of those teams. You reap what you sow. I've been saying, you've been saying that game is not going to be very meaningful. It's not meaningful. If Dallas wins the game, it still doesn't matter. You prefer Dallas to win. Why? So that Philly has to play again the next week against New Orleans. They got to keep playing. They can't shut it down on Christmas Eve because Dallas stinks so much that they clinched this early in the season. If they clinch on New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve, they could conceivably not play guys on New Year's Day, the following week against the Giants, and then have a bye week. That's a whole preseason of not playing. And then you're restarting your season in the playoffs against Dallas. So all this Dallas, they could be playing, and you not, and then they face you 6 weeks from now.
This is what kind of drives me nuts with Eagles Twitter a bit. Oh, this is our chance to bury the Cowboys. No, they're buried. They're dead. They're buried. They're not winning that division. All the Eagles have to do is beat the Saints or the Giants. If I'm the Eagles, I wouldn't give Dallas anything.
Giants. They don't have to win both of them. They only need to win one.
Exactly. If I'm the Eagles, I'm not giving Dallas any leverage in this game. I'm not showing them anything because there's a really good chance that's your first playoff opponent.
Yeah. Oh, and listen, and then of course, if you beat them again, now you would have to beat them 3 times in a row. They're not. Look, I'm not saying they're at the point where they're laughable and that they can't beat you. Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys can beat you. That there's no question about that. But don't give them more opportunity to. Look, if you play them, beat them Christmas Eve, the division's over and the 1 seed's over. You've got that clinched as well. But beating the same team a 3rd time, that gets a little tricky. So I think look, even if you clinch, there's still a lot of story left to go.
I'll tell you what, Mike, I actually couldn't believe this, that Philadelphia, in a way, if the Vikings don't have the greatest comeback in NFL history in terms of points, this thing it is over, but it pretty much virtually would have been over if the Vikings lost. Because I think if the Vikings lost, I think they would have been out, and it's just, okay, beat Dallas or win one of your last 3 and you're in.
Yeah, that would have been Minnesota's 4th loss, right? They would have been they would have had the same record as Dallas. So, and then you beat them head to head. So the best you could do would be a tied record.
Which
and
Eagles had the tiebreaker.
And right, in the head-to-head game. Now, if there was a 3-way tie, that would have changed the dynamics. I don't know how that could work out. If Dallas finished with 4 losses, Minnesota 4 losses, and then the Eagles lost out, then they would have 4 losses.
It would go by conference records. So the
right,
Eagles
I'm saying I don't know what the conference records would end up being because they still have games to go, but that's now not a possibility. You know what would have been interesting? If Minnesota ended up tying that game, right?
It would have been a huge tie, by the way.
Yeah, well, how would that have factored in the tie? Can you imagine if the tie and the Philadelphia lost for whatever reason yesterday? They didn't play great. We can get into that. But if they would end up losing the game yesterday and Minnesota tied and Minnesota had, 3 losses and then you had 2.
They'd be, 2.5 back? Well, with the Eagles loss, it would have been, I guess, 1.5.
Right. And then if Dallas beat you and then you ended up getting your 3rd loss, Minnesota would have 3. And then if Philly lost one of those, it would have been a wonky situation. But look, the Eagles continue to take care of business. Minnesota, give them credit. They took care of business. It was unconventional, but they kept the pressure on you a little bit. They're 2 back with 3 to go. And Dallas now falls 3 back with 3 to go.
This week in the NFL, to me, I can't stand the fact Jeff Saturday's a head coach. I don't like it. I don't like how he got there. Nothing could have been more appealing to me than watching Jeff Saturday blow a 33-0 lead. And then I got dessert on Sunday by watching Bill Belichick continue to prove he can't win without Tom Brady, because I have no idea what Jacoby Myers was thinking. Ramondre Stevenson said it was pretty much a draw, and Myers was there, so he figured he'd pitch it back, just to see if anything could get going. I still don't know what the Patriots were doing, but it takes a village to literally lose to Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, to Josh McDaniels. I figured, okay, Belichick could get to McDaniels. In my head coaching rankings, Josh McDaniels would be in the bottom 5, and somehow they won that game against Bill Belichick.
And they're still in the playoff race as a result of it.
Yeah, that's another thing. Josh McDaniel, to me, you talk about Saturday. Think about that. Saturday out-coached McDaniel in his first ever NFL game. So for McDaniel to win that game yesterday against Belichick was pretty shocking to me. I thought that would be a clear advantage for New England, because New England, they were in the playoffs as of yesterday.
Yeah, now but this is why I can't stand Josh McDaniels, right? So the Raiders blow a big lead to the Cardinals in week 2. Big lead. They blow that game to Baker Mayfield. They lose to Jeff Saturday. This team should be comfortably in the playoffs, and they're not going to make it.
They should be comfortably in the playoffs because they have the talent to be in the playoffs. They made the playoffs last year and got Devonta Adams. They upgraded the team considerably. The only position they downgraded was the coach.
How is that possible? Like, why do people keep wanting Josh McDaniels, the Colt. I mean, he basically picked his staff in Indianapolis and said, nah, I'm not going there.
Listen, I hope that the Raiders rot in mediocrity for his entire tenure. For the owner to give that guy another chance after what he did, you reap what you sow. You deserve to have mediocrity just oozing from your pores when you hire Josh McDaniels after what he did to that Colts organization.
And then you got Jeff Saturday, which again, I think Jim Irsay, it is what it is, right? I don't like the fact Jeff Saturday got his job, but I don't think there's any way Jeff Saturday keeps that job. I actually think Jim Irsay goes out and gets a big name this offseason.
I would think so too. I don't like the way that it happened. I don't have a problem with them giving him that. I don't like that happening. I don't mind if they did it conventionally and went through a process and said, you know what, we're going to think outside the box. It happens in other sports all the time. An NBA player walks off the court. The next thing you know, he's coaching a team. Steve Nash, Jason Kidd. I mean, it's all over the place. Same with baseball. These guys are catching one day, they're managing the next. So
I'm waiting for Yadier Molina to be a manager.
Yeah, I mean, it happens a lot in other sports where we see guys who are, not too long done their playing days, and then they jump into the field. I think it was more non-conventional because Saturday was on television. He had zero coaching experience. A lot of these guys have no coaching experience in the other sports either, but they're not usually like television analysts. And then, hey, you're on primetime yesterday or Sunday. You're on Get Up with Greeny on Monday. You're coaching on Tuesday. I mean, if you listen to Greeny on the radio, he did a whole bit about how he sent his resume out to like all these different college jobs. He's like, well, if Saturday you got a job from being on the radio with me, why can't I get a job?
Yeah, what was funny about all that, I remember watching him on Get Up that morning when he was picked. And he's just, I wonder if Jim Irsay literally called him like during the show or maybe before the show and he just kept it quiet.
What I think they wanted to do with this hiring is to get the opinion of someone to go down on the field and find out who belongs here and who doesn't. It wasn't about trying to win games and lose games. It was go down there, go to practice. Who are the winners and who are the losers? Who do we need to get rid of? Tell the front office so that we can because we've had this group of guys here. We keep thinking we need a quarterback. They've brought in 5 different quarterbacks. That's not their fault. I mean, Andrew Luck, he left, and if you read the article, I think Seth Wickersham wrote this long piece on it. It was very good. I mean, I don't blame anybody, but they lost Andrew Luck. They tried to replace him, 5 different guys. None of them have worked. I guess Rivers worked out a little bit.
But he retired.
Okay. Yeah, he retired. So is it the quarterback problem that we keep having, or some of these players need to go? Because it's the same group of players. They've had the same group of players there for about 5 years. They just keep kind of adding a little bit here. So I think he was kind of brought in to figure out which guys are winners and which guys are not. It was not to say, hey, come in here and win games for us.
Don't you think it's crazy how the Houston Texans, as bad as their roster, keep in mind, they only got 3 active receivers on the game day roster yesterday. I'm like, boy, what a tank job they're trying to do here. And yet they take the Cowboys to the brink. And I'll say it. I got to go on Kansas City radio in an hour. I'm going to tell them straight up. The Texans should have won yesterday.
Yeah, the Texans have played, they gave the Eagles problems on that Thursday night. They gave Dallas problems. They gave Kansas City problems. They just don't have the talent. This is another situation where they're just getting, we talked about the Giant-Eagles game. I said this on my show. The disparity in the talent jumped off the television. The Giants did not have a good game plan, and they got their butts whipped. A lot of times a good coach, and I like Daboll a lot. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I think they had a bad game plan that week. Lovie Smith's doing a tremendous job with what he has. He's scheming very well. They do a really good job. They just don't have the talent to compete, especially against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I've been saying for a while on your show and every show, my show, the Chiefs just aren't all that good outside of Mahomes and Kelsey. They're really good with those 2 players. Their receivers are pedestrian. Their run game is okay. I mean, I think Pacheco's added a little life to the run game, but they don't commit to the run. Their secondary is horrible. They're horrible in the secondary. That Chiefs team is limited in a lot of spots, and you saw it on display yesterday.
Do you think Patrick Mahomes wins MVP because this team isn't as good as we thought it was?
Well, and I think that's the thing is, look, what is that Chiefs team without Patrick Mahomes? I know people got all up in a mess this week because Micah Parsons says the system. You take Jalen Hurts off the Eagles, their roster is still good. I don't know if they're 13-1, but they might be 10-3. You know, they're still a really good team without Jalen Hurts. If you have a capable quarterback, you take Patrick Mahomes off that team, and outside of giving them Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen or one of the top,
let's give them Gardner Minshew. What would they be with Gardner Minshew?
500,
maybe
if they're lucky. They can't run the ball. Their defense is horrible. The Kansas City Chiefs couldn't stop the two of us. We could have 10 catches for 80 yards. We couldn't run. We'd go right down. But, I mean, their pass defense stinks. Their receivers, look, they have no weapons on the outside. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster is a nice slot guy. He's a possession receiver. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, seriously? This is the team that we think is the best team in the league? No, they have the best quarterback in the league. That's no slight to anybody. But you put any other quarterback, look, we watched Jalen Hurts last year struggle along without any weapons, and he was good. He wasn't great. He's great now, in part because he has a great player to be paired with. Most people who are great have great pairings.
And like Patrick Mahomes, he seems to significantly improve every year.
Well, he's improved his skill set, no question. But part of improving your skill set also is improving your roster. Joe Montana had Jerry Rice. Nobody complained about that.
He had Dwight Clark and Freddie Solomon before that.
He had great players. Most people who win the MVP, it's a product of, Aaron Rodgers won MVP last year. He had Devonta Adams. Interestingly enough, Devonta Adams ain't there anymore. Is Aaron Rodgers in the MVP conversation?
No.
It's not a slight. It's a reality. You still have to be good enough. Like if you just said, hey, here's A.J. Brown and Devonta Adams on the same team, and you put who's the kid who came in to relieve Fieldjet? Peterman.
Yeah, Nate Peterman.
Nate Peterman ain't winning the MVP because he's got two great weapons. You got to be somewhat capable. So, the whole it's the system. It's not really a slight as much as it is reality. But
the system that beat him, by the way.
Yeah. Well, listen, the one guy right now, anyway, he lost Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, who, by the way, could have been in the MVP conversation if he continued to play at the level he was at. The guy's going to have 1,700 yards possibly. He lost them, and he's still the best player in the league. But they're not the best team in the league. Does that matter? Do you have to be on the best team? I don't think so. I think if your team is in the Kansas City Chiefs, in many people's mind, are more of a contender for the Super Bowl than the Eagles are. Why?
Because of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
Because they have Patrick Mahomes and the Eagles do not. That's the big picture thought process. Maybe not to the people watching or listening to Good Morning NFC East, but I think nationally, all 32 markets, the Chiefs are more feared than the Eagles are because they have Mahomes.
This is how I'm determining the MVP race right now. I love all your points you said about Patrick Mahomes. I mean, what he's got around him.
By the way, real quick, yesterday's game by Hurts, while he didn't throw any touchdowns and he didn't have a great game throwing the ball, it was a signature game for him. He's still in the biggest moments of the game, in the fourth quarter, when it mattered the most, he played his best. When they needed him the most, now, he ran too much yesterday. He took too many hits. He still scored 3 touchdowns. He still had a game yesterday that jumped off the page, even though he didn't play all that well, and I think he would tell you that.
That's the thing. Like, Jalen Hurts still made NFL history yesterday, even though he didn't have a good game throwing the ball. Like you said, this is my Mahomes-Hurts thing. Hurts is, in my opinion, the best player on the best team in the NFL. If you're going to go by that, he wins MVP. But if you're going by Patrick Mahomes, pretty much he's going to break the passing yardage record. He only needs to average 320 yards per game to do that, which he's done all year. he's going to break the combined pass per rush yards record. He only needs like 240 yards per game to do that because Mahomes is actually have a good year running the ball. Then you give it to Mahomes. I think this vote is going to be as close as it's ever been because of how well Patrick Mahomes has played and how well Jalen Hurts has played. I'll tell you what, Mike, I still have no idea who I'm going to vote for. I have an idea, but I still don't have a clue.
Well, and I wonder, you're probably one of the younger. You have a vote?
I don't have an AP vote. That's the one that counts. I do have my PFWA vote, though.
Okay. Well, I don't know what the demographic is of the AP voters. I know Rob Motti assigns those voters. I could probably figure out, what it is. But are these writers going to vote for the more traditional passer, the guy whose numbers that they always look at? Okay, we're voting for MVP. What kind of year they have? Well, he threw for 4,500 yards and he had 40 touchdown passes. Well,
Jalen Hurts has 35 touchdowns.
Yeah, but they didn't come through the air. So
I don't care. 6 is 6.
Yeah, but I'm saying the way that the voters are going to look at the stats, they're going to flip over the bubblegum card because let's be honest, these voters aren't watching these teams play every single week. They're watching whatever team they're covering every single week, unless you're a national guy and you have, quite frankly, you work CBS nationally, but you're not watching every single game every week. You have an assignment of which game you're supposed to focus on. So you're watching that game intently. But what about the other 14 games going on at the same exact time?
I watch them Tuesday and Wednesday.
Well, and that's because you're doing a good job. I don't know that everybody's going back and watching every snap of every single play so they can get a true feel of how these guys played. They might just say, all right, well, here's Patrick Mahomes, 4,500 yards. I don't know how many yards he's going to end up with. I'm just pontificating, but 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns. And blah, blah, blah. And here's Jalen Hurts up 3,200 yards and only 25 touchdowns.
By the way, Mike, he's at 4,500 yards already.
Oh, there you go. Well, but the touchdown disparity is in the air is going to be great. Now, is the voter going to say, well, let me go see how much rushing that Jalen Hurts actually ended up getting? Or is that too much work?
It might be too much work for some people. Mike Gill, we got to continue this conversation tonight. I will be on with you on 97.3 ESPN. No more Monday games for the Bordertown Bears. We're undefeated, but we don't have any more Monday or Wednesday.
Wow, what a turnaround. Weren't you guys struggling a couple of years ago? Didn't you take over a floundering team?
I took over. Well, I'm not the head coach, but I was on a different team last year. But Bordertown last year was 9-13, and they missed the playoffs. But this is what happens when we have 8 seniors, Mike, who could shoot.
Oh, see, I didn't know you switched teams. I didn't know that you had.
I moved close. I went closer to the home.
Gotcha. All right. Well, good job.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, Mike. Mike Gill, I will see you later tonight. I will also be on Wednesday. I have no idea if you're going to have a show Friday, by the way.
I personally am off Tuesday and Wednesday, but we do have shows all week long, even on Friday. I will be on Friday.
So Hennig and I will have to joke about what our favorite Christmas movie is like we did last week.
He'll be filling in for me Wednesday, yes.
All right, sounds great. Thanks for coming on, Mike. I always appreciate it, my friend.
All right, see ya.